In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Marianne's guests are leaders in their field, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in their own work. They teach others to develop, refocus, and grow. Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. And remember, make every moment count.
Hello and welcome to Moments with Marianne. Today, my very special guest is Alan Cohen. Most of you probably already know Alan. He's written 24 popular inspirational books, including the best-selling book, The Dragon Doesn't Live Here Anymore, and he's been noted for his contribution to the New York Times #1 best-selling series, Chicken Soup for the Soul. His books have been translated over 24 different languages. Alan's been featured on Oprah and in USA Today, The Washington Post, and many more magazines and radio shows to list here. So we're actually here to talk to Alan today about his new book, A Course in Miracles Made Easy. Ooh, now doesn't that sound exciting? So welcome to the show, Alan.
Hi, Marianne. I'm so happy to be with you.
Oh, well, thank you, Alan. And I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. I'm very excited to learn a little bit more about your book and your events that you have, all those great things. And so I guess we'll just kind of get right into it here. What inspired you to write this book, A Course in Miracles Made Easy?
I've been studying the Course for over 30 years, and I've also talked to oodles of students of the Course, and a lot of them find it very abstruse and difficult, and they can't get beyond the second chapter, and how do I practice the lessons, and it's too much. And I guess the sad thing is that the Course is amazingly wonderful and transformational and healing, and it's really much easier than people think it is. So I thought I would make a contribution, if I could, and boil the Course down to its simplest, easiest, most palatable aspects so that people can really make it work in their life without feeling overwhelmed by it.
Oh, I understand that. I have picked up the original Course in Miracles before, and it looked a little daunting, so I actually put it back down.
Yes, and that's probably more normal than the people who continue.
Well, and so, in writing this book, I know it's about, overcoming fear and moving into that. Can you explore that a little bit more for our listeners?
Yeah, well, the Course, probably the most basic concept of the Course is that there are really only two emotions that human beings experience, love and fear. Mm-hmm. And all other emotions are derivations of those two. So for fear you have anger and jealousy and depression and upset and rage and loneliness and isolation, which are all offspring of fear. And then for love you have joy and connection and intimacy and celebration and connection and aliveness and health and vitality. And it says that every thought we think, every word we speak, every action we do proceeds from either love or fear. And fear doesn't feel good and it doesn't work, and love feels great and it works. So the Course is trying to get us in 1,000 different ways to recognize when we're in fear, and then it gives us lots of tools and techniques to shift from the experience of fear to the experience of love. Well,
and it's allowing people to, like you're saying, to recognize it and then make that choice in how they want to, how they want their life to be. Do we want it to be a struggle and everything's really hard and we're angry all the time or upset or fearful, or do we want to be able to show up each day and not really have so much attachment, I guess, to some of these outcomes that are happening. Like something happens, it doesn't go the way we want, to really look instead at the positive aspects of what that holds.
Very well said.
Oh, okay. Well, and as being a new person with A Course in Miracles, some of it was very it makes sense. And I like the way that you boiled it down in your book. You made it very, very simple. So in your book you talk about identity theft. Do you mind expanding on that?
Yeah. Well, we're born innocent and pure and loving, and if you have children or if you've ever been a child, you know that children come in, they're free spirited, they don't care if they're naked, and they want to go to people they love, and they express themselves, and they laugh, and they play. And then at some point, at a very early point, we begin to be programmed and hypnotized to the fact that we're small and we're limited, and this is what good girls do, and this is what bad girls do. And if you really want to succeed, you have to become a doctor, and watch out for these people, and on and on. So we're taught, we come in as big spiritual beings, and then we're taught that we're little, stinky, stupid bodies, and we experience the shift from big me to little me, and then we go on living as if we're little me, and we wonder why we're not happy. So in order to be healed and alive and prosperous and loving, we have to trace our way back to who we were before we were taught all the small things that we are. We're much bigger than any program we receive from church, parent, culture, government, whatever. So it really, the course is about shifting identity from small self to great self.
Well, and that makes perfect sense. I mean, because we all, I mean, even the most well-meaning parents do that type of programming because it's what they know, Exactly. So, and then we end up, and not even to talk about being bombarded by, like different media sources that say women are supposed to look a certain way, or, we're supposed to act a certain way, and it's it's nice to be able to, boil it down and get rid of that programming so that we can, be our divine selves.
It's like we're walking around with this big, heavy, dark sack on us, or a heavy, smelly, old, dirty cloak, and just weighing us down, weighing us down, weighing us down. We think, well, everybody has to carry this, and this is the way I'm supposed to live. But then if we would just examine, is this who I really am? Does this really belong to me? Is this really how I want to live? You start to wake up and you get deprogrammed, start dehypnotizing yourself, and you start standing strong and clear and naked in your true self. And that's the most liberating experience on the world. That's what I've gone through. I know you've gone through that in your own way, and lots of our listeners perhaps are going through that.
Do you feel that that's a really a difficult shift for a lot of people, or can it be very simple?
It can be simple, but fear makes it difficult. I've spoken to so many people who left marriages after many years, and they said, I was so afraid to leave because it was the known world. But after a while, the known world became so painful that the fear of leaving became less than the joy of what could happen instead. Or let's say the pain of staying became less than the fear of leaving. And so they hang on, but then when they get it, they go, okay, it's really time. And they look back and they say, wow, I could have done this years earlier. Not that we're encouraging people to get divorced, but anything that you're holding on to that's not working for you can become an albatross and weigh you down. So it can be easy if you let it. I know people who've walked out of marriages or jobs or living situations real gently, but so it's up to you, however you want to do it. It's a free world.
Well, it's nice to be able to, have that opportunity to make those choices, because I know you hear people talk about all the times how they feel stuck, or like, oh, I can't do this. They've been doing it for so long. Like how you're saying, they're just used to being in those situations or that employment or whatever the case may be, that it's like hard to make that shift and move beyond that,
Well, we live way out in the country, and we get rats and mice around the house once in a while. Mm-hmm. So I caught a rat in a no-kill trap, and I took him out to the field, and I opened the door, and I tried to let him out, but he started clinging to the cage. And I shook the cage, and it clung hard. I shook it, clung hard. Finally, gave it a really good shake, and it ran out and ran away. And I thought, what an amazing metaphor, that I was trying to offer the rat freedom, but he was clinging to his cage. So a lot of us cling to jobs and marriages and living situations and ways of life and lifestyles and diets that are hurting us. And we, it seems, and life shakes us up. When you have a divorce or a health setback, life is shaking. You're saying, wait a minute, look at your life. But you can cling to it if you want, but, the door is open if you want to just jump.
Well, I think a lot of times life will shake the cage harder until we make a choice to move.
Exactly.
We get the big old shake up. So how did the Course of Miracles come into being?
It's an amazing story, actually. There were two psychologists in New York City, Helen and Bill, and they were both highly respected in their field, and he was a director of a hospital psychiatry department. I mean, these were very, very credible people. And Helen was actually a cynical Jewish atheist, Jewish by culture, atheist by belief. She was kind of a hard-boiled character. But she also had psychic propensities. And then one day, they were not getting along. They were fighting and competing. And one day, Helen came to Bill and said, there must be another way. And he said, yes. And so the Course says that was the beginning of the Course in Miracles, because at that point, two people who were steeped in separation and animosity chose to join and get together. And so soon after that, Helen began to hear a voice, and it said, this is a Course in Miracles, please take notes. And this really freaked her out, because she was a psychologist, and she regularly dealt with people who heard voices, and she had to diagnose them as nuts, and here she was hearing a voice. So she went to Bill and said, Bill, I've been hearing a voice. And he said, what does it say? She said, it says, this is the Course in Miracles, please take notes. What do you think I should do? He said, well, why don't you take notes? So she did, and she knew shorthand, so she got a steno pad and started writing what was coming. And she showed it to Bill, and he was stunned. He said, this is amazing. I want to work with you on this. So he was a typist. So every night she would take dictation at home, and every morning she would come to the office, and they would lock themselves in his office and pull down the blinds like they were having an affair or something like that. They weren't, but it looked like that. And
didn't want the neighbors to see.
Right. And so she read the dictation, he typed it, and this took place over 7 years, almost every day. And then they made a manuscript, and so people discovered and said, hey, this is earth-changing. And they published it, and one thing led to the next. So the story of how it came is actually as amazing as the content of the Course itself.
Did they find out who it was that was dictating to them?
Well, the voice identifies itself as Jesus Christ. Now, before people get upset because they think it's a Christian religion text, it's actually the spiritual Jesus more than the religious Jesus, and it's totally compatible with Christianity. But, it's also studied by Jews and Hindus and Muslims and Buddhists and atheists, and it's not a religious text. It's more the spiritual, visionary Jesus than the Jesus that's associated with religion.
Now, this, like the essence, because I think I've heard people talk about a lot of the great spiritual teachers carry that same, that essence, the Christ consciousness.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, that's fabulous. So, and I understand that we are all miracle workers in the Course of Miracles. Could you kind of expand upon that for our listeners?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the Course in Miracles considers us all miracle workers, meaning that any of us is capable of delivering healing and release and upliftment and transformation to anybody at any time. This is not just reserved for yogis and people who are gifted. We're all gifted. And it says the way to create a miracle is that you see the best in other people, that you hold the vision of their possibilities, that you treat them with kindness and you treat them with grace and you treat them with forgiveness. And when you break the agreement that we're all just struggling peons competing for good, and you say, hey, we're all in this together, let me help you, it says you can actually change somebody's life in a huge way by stepping into that space of love and inviting them there. And I've seen this many, many times in my own life and those around. Can I tell you a quick story that relates to that?
Oh, yes, please do.
Well, one of my friends named Cliff was a avid Course in Miracles student. And one night he was in his Brooklyn apartment, and he heard a noise in the bedroom. And he went in, there was a burglar breaking in. And the guy started to run, and Cliff said, no, wait, you don't have to run. I'll help you if I can. And they started to talk about what was going on in this guy's life, and he had just broken up with his girlfriend, he lost his job, and he was desperate. And Cliff gave him some coffee, and they had a good chat, and the guy really felt better. Cliff gave him a few bucks and said, come back if you need to. And in that moment, a situation that was potentially quite dangerous and harrowing turned into a healing. And it was because Cliff was, as a Course in Miracles student, he was committed to seeing situations through the eyes of love and not fear. And so that's how we create miracles. You see through love, not fear.
Well, and I heard also through one, it was, I believe, one of your podcasts, you had also talked about a friend who just gave birth to a baby that was having some difficulties. Choosing to see the baby as whole and perfect. The baby ended up becoming that way. But it's really empowering to hold people in that light and in that space. As opposed to looking at what's wrong with them or what's potentially wrong with them.
Yeah, it's a great example, Marianne. In that story with the baby, this kid was born with a certain hemophilia propensity, and it wasn't an easy birth. And so I went to the hospital to visit, and the kid was behind the glass wall and had all kinds of tubes and electrodes and stuff stuck to him. And the family was there, and they were all worried, the parents and the grandparents, and they were all just really, really anxious about this kid. And I just said a little prayer, and I said, how can I help here? And the voice came to me and said, just hold the vision. Just see this child as perfect and see his life unfolding in a healthy way. And it said, your peace is your gift to this family. If you go into worry with them, then there's one more person worrying. And the energy of worry is not productive. It doesn't really get you what you want to get. And so I did that. And then, fortunately, the kid, came back, and he ended up living a very healthy life. So I'm not saying I caused that, but I am saying that I contributed to that. And I'm saying that my contribution to the family was the fact that I gave them a moment of peace rather than fear, and that's that's the best I could do in that moment.
Oh, definitely. I mean, because I'm sure they probably are surrounded enough by very well-meaning people that will easily point out what they're seeing or the negativity aspect of that. I actually had a friend of mine not long ago. She just found out that her and her husband, that she's pregnant, and she was so upset when I met up with her for lunch. She was saying there were so many people telling her so many negative things because she was talking about the baby within the first trimester. And there's a lot of old school thinking about that, and she was so distraught. So we spent a little time talking about, don't listen to them. And just focus on perfect, happy, healthy baby, That
was a lovely gift you gave her.
Well, I've been following your writings for some time, and so, some of it does wear off.
Well, I'm sure there's others that helped you too, but I give you all credit for absorbing it and using it. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, definitely. Since we're miracle workers, what thing can we do to be a miracle worker in our everyday life? And I know we kind of went over a little bit, but just, if I'm looking to make this kind of change in perspective as a listener, what can I do today to start making a change in my perspective?
Well, this is something we teach our coaches. I do a life coach training, and for people who want to be professional life coaches. And one of the key principles we offer them is called reframing. And reframing means simply to take a situation that seems dark or negative or painful or insolvable and find another way to look at it that brings healing and upliftment. And, it's just, and the Course in Miracles says that the definition of a miracle is a shift in perception or a shift in perspective. So it means that the situation may not change, but the way you look at it changes. I'll give you kind of an extreme example. My friend, a friend of mine was married for many years, and they had 2 children. It was a guy, and then he decided that he was gay, and he left his wife for this other man, and all the while retaining deep love for his wife and deep love for his children, but he just had to be true to himself. And he told me that, of course, his wife was upset, but ultimately they all ended up supporting each other. And when his partner was ill, the wife went over and made the guy smoothies. And, he still remains extremely committed to her and the kids. Now, you and I both know that in a situation like that, most wives would be extremely upset and turn their back and could have ongoing warfare for years.
Yeah,
but
I think ego also gets involved too,
Yeah. But she chose, and all credit to her, she chose to reframe and say, okay, this is what's happening. It may not be how I planned it to turn out, but I'm not going to change it, so let me view this through the eyes of love. And he's still really good friends with her. They work together, and he speaks of her only in superlatives. And so, that's a good example of a situation that could have gone dark, but it went light because people made a higher choice.
Definitely, and if they have children involved, then that's even more important, because it's really about them and making sure that they see everything in the most positive light as possible.
We're going to pause here for a quick break. We'll be right back. We've been speaking with Alan Cohen, author of A Course in Miracles Made Easy. That's actually just one of his books, but stay tuned and we'll be right back.
In 2012, after returning home from Iraq and Afghanistan, Sean Goodman hiked over 2,000 miles of the Appalachian Trail. Recognizing the therapeutic effects of long-distance hiking, Sean founded Warrior Expeditions, a veteran nonprofit therapy program that supports veterans transitioning from their military service by hiking America's national scenic trails. Equipment and supplies are provided, as well as assistance with job placement. For more info or to help support these veterans, visit warriorexpeditions.org.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 1-2-3 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
Are you an author looking for publicity for your book? If you're self-published or have worked through a traditional publisher, Marianne Pestana can help you get the media attention you require. Contact Marianne Pestana, literary publicist and host of Moments with Marianne, to create a winning plan of action. Marianne has helped authors become bestsellers and has received highly acclaimed media attention for her clients. Some of her work has received attention from ABC, NBC, CNN, CBS, Fox, and PBS, in addition to print and radio. She's a specialist in utilizing social media and her list of exclusive contacts to further the reach of your work. Contact MariannePestana.com to discuss the future of your work today.
Are you stuck in your creative process and hitting a roadblock at every turn? Book an appointment with creativity coach Katie Fowler to turn your art and life around. Katie is an award-winning artist, highly sought-after creativity coach, speaker, TV personality, and best-selling author of An Artist's Journey Through Wonderland. Katie guides people in connecting with themselves, with others, and with their own passions. Go to katiefowler.net now to begin your journey through your creative wonderland.
Ben Wexler is a gifted leadership development and strategy consultant for professionals who want to transform their organizations and careers. Through a uniquely personalized set of processes, participants discover their unique knowledge, how to leverage that knowledge and experience, and then put it all together with a global strategy. You're more valuable, your organization is more valuable, and the change is viral. Contact Ben at 630-881-1074, 630-881-1074.
Are you having an average day? Do you seem to be having more average days than great days? I'm Marina J, and I help women turn that around. If you want fast, deep transformation on the stuff that hurts you the most, visit me at marinaj.net to receive support and inspiration now, because your happiness is everything.
Are you dreading your next business trip with all of the unhealthy food choices? Well, eating healthy while on the road for business is no longer a hopeless battle. Natasha Leger, a road warrior herself, not a doctor, dietitian, or nutritionist, but a real-life business person, understands the unique stresses of business travel and has written a book to inspire us and show us how easy it is to make healthy choices while on the road. Order Travel Healthy, a road warrior's guide to eating healthy at TravelHealthyBook.com. That's TravelHealthyBook.com.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We've been speaking with our very special guest, Alan Cohen. So, Alan, I've got a question here for you.
Do you think that ego kind of can really trip us up along our path with, diving into A Course of Miracles and practicing it?
Not only can it, but it does most of the time. The Course in Miracles spends a lot of ink on what the ego is and how it works and how to deal with it. And it's, there's a part of our mind that is stuck, and it argues for smallness and it argues for our limits, and will find ways to interpret situations, to hurt us and hurt other people. And it's just an amazing, amazing process to watch. So people always ask me, how do I distinguish between the voice of spirit and the voice of ego? It's a very common question.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one.
People ask it all the time, and I come up with what I think is a pretty good way to do it. That spirit has a unique vibration. It's an energy. It feels a certain way when you connect with it. And ego has a different kind of energy, a different kind of feeling. An example I give is, imagine that your best friend is Susan, and somebody who's not Susan calls you one day and says, "Hey, this is Susan. I need to speak to you. Meet me at Starbucks in an hour." And the question is, would you go? And the answer is, of course you wouldn't, because you know Susan's voice. And the voice you heard was not hers. And then let's say an hour later, the real Susan calls, and she says, hey, she didn't say her name. She just says, hey, meet me at Starbucks. Would you go? Well, of course you would, because you know Susan. So the idea is that spirit feels friendly and welcoming and homecoming and nurturing and soothing and easeful and peaceful. The ego has a whole different frequency. It's like it's demanding, and it's scary, and it's threatening, and it's guilt-inducing, and it's manipulative, and it goes on and on. And the whole energy of ego is like, it's like it's like a big adrenaline rush. And the voice of spirit says, okay, just relax, you're going to be okay, and just trust. And so I've spent many years now learning to distinguish between those two voices. I got it down pretty good. I'm not 100%, but I invite people to try the voice of whatever voice is speaking to you from inside your head. Try it on for size and see if it feels like it's leading you to a soothing, easeful, healing place, or is it leading you to more tension and more drama. And if you can be really honest about how it feels when you try it on for size, you'll discover the difference between the two.
And you can really tell, it sounds like pretty easily then, if it's going to keep you kind of on the path where you're saying like things come with an ease, or if it's going to throw you off in the bushes, which we don't need to be there.
That's a good way of putting it, because ego ends up in the bushes and spirit ends up on the path. Well said.
It feels like that. I mean, because I know often on my path, I always look to do the most, that's the most beneficial thing I can, and try to be, how do I want to say this? But try to be very, honest and leave ego out of the equation when I'm dealing with people, and look at it from a perspective of love. And there are times, it's interesting, when something comes up, I can tell if it's hitting a button, and I'll have to take a second and go, okay, that's ego, and let it go and kind of move, go back to looking at the situation or whatever the case may be with eyes of love, as opposed to getting riled up or angry or being offended or any of those kind of things. That actually boil down to the fear part that you were talking about. It's definitely a journey, though.
It takes practice. I mean, it took years and years for the ego to dig in its heels, so to speak. And so, you're not going to dump it overnight. It's really rare that somebody just wakes up and loses their ego. Usually it's a practice of practicing and peeling away and trying stuff on for size and trial and error and getting it wrong and doing it over. But I promise our listeners that if you just stay with it, you'll get lighter and lighter and freer. Well, and I, as a student and teacher of this, Alan, I'm sure, and especially because you've been doing it for so long, I mean, you can just tell by talking with you. I mean, you sound like you're in a tremendous peaceful place. Not that you're probably there all the time, but from what I've heard of other podcasts and just talking to you now, it seems like you got it down, Well, I'm working on it. It's like I have my moments and I have my upsets, but, my life is becoming more and more peaceful in general, let's say.
Okay. Well, and then, so a couple other questions about the Course in Miracles. I know everything is referred to, for the most part, in, like, as in he or his. Is there a reason that they're using that type of language that would make sense for us now, Yeah,
that's a good question. The best I can come up with is that a couple of reasons. One is that most of the people in Western culture have been raised in religions that refer to God as a he. Christianity, Judaism, and in Eastern cultures, Islam, God is considered a he. So the Course was trying to reach us in language that we're familiar with, in terms that we were familiar with. And I'm certain that, and I tell my students this, that the Course would have no objection to you calling God a she or it or a spirit or life force or energy. That's just one way of looking at it. The other answer I've come up with is that the Course is trying to bring us to oneness And it's just like if you went to he and she, it's like a duality. So they just picked he as a oneness term. And also in many traditions, God is the father energy, and then there's the mother energy, the divine mother in Catholicism and Hinduism. There's lots of there's female entities. So it's just one angle on it, and I really hope people won't get hung up on it. It's not a big deal. It would be a shame if women or anybody missed the value of the Course because they got hung up on the masculine gender. It's just, it's just the way it is, and translate it if you like.
Yeah, well, and I think you're right. I know you're right with that. When it comes down to the, looking at it from that perspective, it really, he can encompass, female, it, whatever people are comfortable with. I mean, it could be universe, whatever they're comfortable with calling, whatever their divinity is. So that makes
whatever
sense.
Works. It's just, God, we care about words. God is trying to speak to us in the language we understand, but, be comfortable with your relationship with Spirit. That's the whole key.
Well, and a lot of times, from, just my journey, I feel like when I feel in a place of love, regardless what the words say, it just makes sense then, It doesn't really matter either way. So there's one part in your book that talks about how the Holy Spirit uses ego. And I would love for you to expand on that for our listeners, because for most people, they would probably, we're already thrown in the bushes on that,
Yeah, well, it's a great question, because it says that the Holy Spirit, according to the Course in Miracles, is basically the voice of God translated into terms that we can understand. It says that God is just a big absolute energy, and there has to be some intermediary, some bridge that allows us to be taught in terms that we understand. So it calls this the Holy Spirit. And it says in the Course that the Spirit can even turn the ego, which is generally evil, so to speak, and generally negative, into something positive. And, it says I'll give you a funny example.
Okay.
Years ago, in the 1970s, there was this phenomenon in Portugal where it was like Our Lady of Fatima, where an angel and Divine Mother would appear, and these kids would come and she would teach them. It was a whole scene like Fatima. Anyway, there was this guy in our community in New Jersey when I lived there who was going around and teaching about this and showing movies and answering questions and leading prayers. A lovely man. And he came to my group once, and I said to him, "How did you get into this?" He said, "Well, I wasn't always into religion and this kind of stuff." He says, "As a young man, I was a dirty joke teller, and I became known as an off-color comedian. I got gigs speaking at men's clubs and parties, and I made a lot of money, and I developed a lot of confidence standing in front of a group telling my jokes." He said, "And then when I discovered this miracle phenomenon," I said, "I really got into that, and I forgot about the dirty jokes, and I started teaching and training. And this phenomenon, now I realized that all of my experience standing on stage telling jokes was just a preparation for the great service I'd be doing." So he knew it not, but in that moment he was being trained for higher calling. And so we could say in that situation that Spirit used the ego, which was behind the joke telling, and prepared him to teach, which is a spiritual adventure.
Well, and that would make perfect sense. Knowing if we go back and like a lot of the apostles that Jesus Christ picked, I mean, they weren't. Some of them were not like the shining. They weren't scholars. They weren't the top people. They were troubled, everyday people like the rest of us.
Yeah, they were fishermen, tax collectors, and prostitutes, and farmers, and regular people who turned their lives over to Spirit, and then everything changed. Yeah,
that makes perfect sense, because you would think about this guy that made his living that way. It just doesn't make any sense, but it makes perfect sense in that way.
Yeah, it all fits the big picture.
It really does. It really does. Now, in your book, you also talk about the Distractor Factor, and basically, it talks about our resistance and ego involved in there. So, is that something we we just have to be mindful of as we are studying, your book, A Course in Miracles Made Easy? Is it something that we just really have to keep in mind, obviously, because you put that in there too? It's a big kind of road sign.
We have to be extremely mindful of it because the ego is totally clever at distracting us, and it'll use any tool it can to keep us from our path. Like, when I used to teach meditation, so you'd be sitting there, and you're committed to 20 minutes now, I'm going to go into deep meditation and prayer, and then after a minute, the mind says, oh, maybe you left the gas on the stove, or I have to scratch, maybe you better go to the bathroom before you sit, or I have to itch, or I better answer an email. And this voice, I see this in myself to this day. I've been doing this for 30, 40 years, and to this day, the ego finds amazing ways to tell me what I should be doing instead of meditating or praying or writing or resting. Mm-hmm. And so you just have to notice the tricks that the ego will play on you and say, okay, that's a really good one, but I'm not falling for it. Like, I really don't have to go to the bathroom. I can wait 20 minutes. Or I really don't need to scratch now. I will not die if I don't scratch. And you just have to have the guts to confront it, say, if this is true, I'll do something about it. But I don't think it is. And then eventually, that trick can't get played on you anymore. The ego will come up with new tricks, but eventually, you figure out the game.
Mm-hmm. You get to that quiet mind. Yeah, I know one of my friends calls it monkey mind, just all over the place. Yeah, so there are times when I start doing my meditation practice, I'm like, okay, get into it. It's like, oh, is this meditating? Oh, shoot, I'm not supposed to be thinking. You just keep going through the conversation until finally it does drift away. So, well, that's great, because a lot of times people, when they start into that practice and start meditation's a really good example. There is that battle that kind of goes on with the ego, trying to get us kind of off in the bushes on that, So.
And the ego battles, but the spirit doesn't. In other words, the idea of fighting the ego is a form of ego, because the ego fights and the spirit flows. So, you said it exactly. When I go to my meditation, I'm just going to make this be my quiet time. And, the more and here's the good news, that the more you receive the rewards and the peace and the bliss and the benefits and the healing of going to that quiet space, the more you realize that that's where you really belong, and that this voice of ego is not going to take you where you want to go.
Mm. I really appreciate you talking about ego and fear, and it's something that I've been studying for some time now, just personally, because it really is the root of what causes so much discord in relationships and just life in general, And so to have this book and have this resource, I mean, it's really helping a lot of people get beyond that, that are looking to, really move out of ego and more into the capacity of love and being there, being present in love in all situations.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you really hit the nail on the head, Marianne, that if our listeners could just imagine, what would my life be like without fear? Mm-hmm. Or even with less fear? I mean, what would my marriage and my relationship be if I wasn't so afraid? Or what would my finances be if I weren't so afraid? And, just to take the image of living without fear, it's unthinkable to most people, but it's the thing you most need to think about, because it's our healing, it's the way out. Diminishment of fear is the whole way out of human suffering. It's the whole way out. And that's what the Course in Miracles is all about, and that's what I was attempting to get out with my book, A Course in Miracles Made Easy.
Well, and you did a phenomenal job doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to tell you, when I picked up your book, I didn't put it away.
Thank you.
So, but just have a few more questions before we get into all the other fun stuff you do, because, oh my goodness, you've got a lot of amazing, who doesn't want to be on a Hawaii retreat with you? I mean, really?
Come.
So, well, in your book, you talk about that you've got a chapter that talks about the dreamer and the dreamed. And, and I just wanted you to expand on that a little bit more for our listeners. I know we've been talking a bit about ego here, but I just love the way that you explain it. You really do make it easy.
This is one of the more advanced concepts, but it's one of the most important ones. And the Course says that the world we look at it seems so real and so solid. It's just a dream. And you know that when you dream at night, you can be making love with somebody great, and then a monster's chasing you, and then you're flying, and all that. In that kind of dream, it seems so real. And then you wake up, you say, "Oh, now I'm back to reality." But the Course is saying that the world we see when our eyes are open is just as much, or perhaps even more, of a dream than what we dream at night. And Hindus have been saying this for thousands of years. They call it Maya. And it's a construct of illusions that the mind has created that makes us feel small. But if you test it, it can be changed. And there's another example I gave in the book of a couple I know had a little baby girl, and she was born with a club foot. And there's one foot turned at a 90-degree angle to the other foot. And the doctor said that it would take about 6 years to correct this with various surgeries and braces. And he said, well, we have to do what we have to do. And then the mother's sister was sitting on an airplane next to a guy who said he was a healer from Guatemala. And so she invited him to a party at the baby's house, and they said, would you pray over the little girl? He said, sure. So he prayed over her foot for just a few minutes. And the girl was scheduled for surgery soon thereafter, and they took the kid in, and they took her for pre-op x-rays, and the doctors had this big consult for 45 minutes, and they said, there's nothing wrong with your child's foot, it's perfect. And they said, it must have been misdiagnosis. Well, there were many x-rays and many doctors who saw it at a right angle. But my understanding from that experience, Marianne, is that prayer really has the power to lubricate. It's kind of a funny word, but it has the power to oil or shift the illusion so that what seems so solid and real and unchangeable and fixed can be changed by the power of mind and heart and love and prayer. So the dream can be manipulated by higher thinking and loving. And that proves it's a dream because, according to all medical knowledge, that girl was stuck with this club foot. But then there's a great lesson in the Course in Miracles that says, number 76, I'm under no laws but God's. And it says that the laws of God supersede the laws of medicine, economics, and social welfare, and on and on. So, if we can just recognize that the world is not as solid as we thought, and it can be changed by love and prayer, so then the dream starts to shift to something better. The Course calls it the happy dream.
The happy dream. Do you think that situation happened because the mom and the aunt, they had an openness to other possibilities, and they weren't, it wasn't like this is the end, this is the deal, and this is what we have to deal with?
Certainly. They believed in prayer. They loved the child. They had an intention for the child to be well. All that came together and manifested this healer. And so, it was a group effort.
That's absolutely, it's so good to hear these stories. A lot of times people, they, when they engage in prayer, and I'm do prayer quite a bit, they feel like they don't see situations changing, so it doesn't matter. But I've seen prayer move some mountains,
Yeah.
I've one situation, I knew somebody that, didn't really have a very good attitude and was really harsh with the people around them. And in praying for that person without any intentions or expectations, it's almost like a blessing, just giving them a prayer. To me, it was amazing that person's perspective changed, and they became kinder and nicer to the people that were around them.
Yeah, that's a miracle.
Yeah, every day. I love these everyday miracles. I'm all for that.
Yeah, and the Course says, prove it. Try this, try these. I just want to underscore here that the real way to master the Course in Miracles is do the workbook. There are 3 books: text, workbook, and manual for teachers. And some people get hung up because they start the text and it's too overwhelming. But the real key to doing the Course is to do 1 workbook lesson a day for a year. That's how it's set up. And the workbook is the thing that really makes it very practical. That'll make miracles in your daily life.
Well, and would we be able to do the workbook with your book? With that, or do we have to get the big Course in Miracles? Okay.
No, certainly. My book can help you. Sure.
Okay, good, because I'm kind of attached to this book.
Okay, well, put it this. All the principles of the Course in Miracles are contained in my book. I say that humbly. That really, if you read my book and draw the truth from it, it's exactly the same truth that you would draw from the Course, because I was inspired by the same source that inspired the Course, and so I certainly recommend people do the whole Course, but if they don't want to, you can certainly receive benefit from my book, certainly.
Oh, good. And that makes sense. You can definitely see that you had that same inspiration, in going through this book. Now, one of your chapters, you talk about teach only love. So what does that mean for our listeners?
Well, the Course says that we're always teaching, and we think teaching means standing in front of the classroom giving a lecture, but the Course says that we're always teaching by our being, our energy. And so when you're upset and you're afraid, you're teaching the reality of fear and the limits that fear prescribes. It says when you're calm and relaxed and poised and loving, you're teaching love merely by your example. So anybody who comes into your field when you're in a loving, calm, serene state will catch that. So it says be very vigilant about the vibration you're emanating, because you're like a radio station. You're sending out a signal, and people will feel your frequency for better or worse. So it says teach love because that's your true nature, and that's what everybody wants to be.
That's so beautiful. And that's also what you'll end up attracting as well,
Exactly.
So you have this vibration of love. We still all have our tests and our challenges that we go through, to see if we're still sitting on that lotus flower.
Years ago, I told this in the book, a dear friend of mine who had a family, I saw her at a conference, and she had just written a book about her family, and she gave me the prototype of it. She said, have a look at it. And she said, watch out, because my original photos, this is before digital photos, and she says, if these are lost, then I don't have any book. I said, all right. And I saw her later on the day. She said, you have a chance to look at the book. I said, oh, my God. And I realized I had left her in the auditorium.
Oh, no.
I felt horrible, and I had no choice but to tell her the truth, and I thought she'd punch me. But she said, well, maybe the book wasn't meant to be published anyway. I thought, oh, my God, I've never heard that before. And so we went back, and fortunately the custodian had found it, and it was a happy ending. But in the moment that she didn't get upset about that, I thought, wow, just about anybody else on the planet would have used that as a reason for guilt or anger. But she was just calm and serene about it. She was a mother of 5. She was a great mother. And so she just had this way about her that trusted and relaxed and accepted. So, that was a great teaching for me. I thought, well, if she could relax around that, I could certainly relax around lesser stuff.
Oh, my goodness, yeah, because, the whole process of getting a book and getting it to print, it's a commitment.
It is.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Well, and what a great lesson. What a fabulous lesson to teach that, no matter what happens, that she's able to stay even keeled throughout all of it,
God bless her, yeah.
Oh, that's fabulous. Well, I know that you've got some fabulous trainings coming up, one starting actually pretty soon, January 6th.
Yeah.
So would you like to share with our listeners all these fabulous things you've got going on?
Well, I do a life coach training. This is one of the most exciting things for me. I train people to become a professional life coach or use life coaching in their current profession. And I like it because we have an intimate group of 16 people that I work with very closely for 6 months. And there's online seminars, an online course. There's a 4-day retreat in Maui. There's personal coaching with me and lots of graduate support. So what we do is we teach people the key spiritual tools to be helpful to anybody, whether you're a salesperson or a mother or a doctor. And we package this in such a very interesting way that anybody can do it. So we have amazing transformations in the coach's own lives, and then, of course, in the lives they touch. So we are starting a new session in January. It goes through June. I think we may have one spot left, so if anybody hears this and wants to play, go to my website, alancohen.com, ALANCOHEN.com. That starts January 4th.
And then you have the Hawaii retreat. I know that's in February, the 21st through the 26th.
Yes.
So, yeah, are you all booked up on that? Or do you still have some?
We still have a space for you.
Hey, I'll use any excuse to go to Hawaii, but to have you as there as well and do a retreat with you, that's like icing on the cake,
Thank you. Yeah, I'm doing a program with my dear friend Dougal Fraser, who's a very gifted psychic and intuitive, really, really, really good, among the best. And so we're doing a 5-day program at a beautiful hotel on a beautiful beach on the Big Island called The Guru in You. And the whole idea is to empower students to find answers and healing and wisdom within their own selves. As you know, lots of psychic teachers try to make students dependent on them, but we're going to turn the tables and invite each person to find their own inner guru and connect with higher guidance at any time they choose. So we're excited about this because it'll be a wonderful seminar with lots of time for play and swimming with dolphins and fun stuff like that. So that'll be February 21 to 26, and we do have a few openings left for that.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be checking that out and seeing if I can book that in my calendar, because that just looks too good not to be there. So I encourage all of our listeners, to go check it out and sign up. Give yourself the early gift. And really, this is something that will last you throughout your lifetime, which is going to just be amazing. Oh. Well, Alan, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today. I so greatly appreciate it. You're just a wealth of information and, great inspiration to me and to many other people. I just really appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure. And you in your own way as well. I can feel the softness and the love and kindness in your voice, and I really sense the inner work you've done on yourself and the importance of you actually mastering these principles. So you are a miracle worker for all of your listeners.
Oh, well, you just made my day.
It's true.
Okay. Oh, well, and to all of our listeners, I want to thank you for tuning in. And remember, make every moment count.
Join us next time for Moments with Marianne, when host Marianne Pestana brings another inspirational gifted leader to help us grow. Tune in every second Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Moments with Marianne, when the Dream Vision 7 radio network is at 1510 a.m. Boston. Or catch Moments with Marianne every Thursday and Friday at 5 p.m. and 5 a.m. Eastern Time by going to dreamvision7radio.com. To learn how Marianne started her business from the ground up, visit mariannepestana.com. Don't miss this, and remember, make every moment count.